Good evening and happy St. Patrick's Day. I'd like to welcome you and call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, March the 17th. I would like to acknowledge that I am an ally of Indigenous peoples. The township of Lucan Biddulph is located on the treaty and traditional territory and ancestral lands of many Indigenous peoples and is covered by several Upper Canada treaties. We honor and respect the history, language, and culture of the diverse Indigenous peoples who call Lucan Biddulph home. We endeavor to unlearn colonial mindsets and practices and to grow in knowledge. As we build meaningful relationships, we recognize the contributions of Indigenous peoples and respect their leadership and partnership in shaping and strengthening our community. We acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? So today is St. Patrick's Day, and knowing Lucan's and Biddulph's Irish roots, it is only fitting that we have a council meeting tonight. There is no secret that our Irish roots run deep. Irish immigrants came to this area beginning in the early 1800s. And Lucan was likely named Lucan for Lord Lucan. And of course, that reflects the strong Irish background of those early settlers. Lord Lucan was a famous landowner in Ireland, and history shows that he sponsored many families that moved to our area. It was between 1845 and 1850 that St. Patrick's Parish was formed. And the parish was named for St. Patrick, not just because of the religious figure that he was, but he is also a symbol of Ireland and, of course, their faith. Naming the parish after him was a natural and meaningful choice as it signaled an identity for this new Irish Catholic community in a new country, in a new community. While we could spend the whole meeting sharing stories of past St. Patrick's Days, I think it's important to recognize why St. Patrick's Day will always be important to the celebrations that we have here. While we have grown, our Irish roots have not been diluted. We still have so many families who can trace their family trees back a number of years to those original Irish settlers. So St. Pat's represents not only our heritage, but it fosters a sense of belonging, and it reflects our cultural pride, and it recognizes where we came from, and as we grow, it continues to shape us. So happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. And remember that today, everyone is Irish. So we do not have to go into closed session, but we do have to go into a public meeting to sit as the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting and meet as a Committee of Adjustment at 4 minutes after 6. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so tonight we have a minor variance application in front of us. And Alyssa, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application before committee is to permit the construction of an attached garage on the west side of the existing single detached dwelling with a minimum exterior side yard width of 1 meter, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum 3.5 meters for a corner lot. The proposed structure will replace the existing one-car attached garage. The subject property is a 1,338 square meter lot situated on the northwest side of the intersection at Saintsbury Line and Duchess Avenue. The lands are municipally known as 34069 Saintsbury Line. The property contains an existing single detached dwelling and attached garage on municipal services. The property is designated residential under the official plan and is zoned residential first density in the zoning bylaw. This zone permits residential uses and their associated accessory uses. The lands are surrounded by low and medium density residential on all sides. No comments were provided by the public prior to the development of this report. A comment was provided by the Asable Bayfield Conservation Authority that they have no objections to the application. The Middlesex County engineer also commented that they have no comments. And Public Works has provided a couple comments concerning that the driveway and parking spaces must comply with zoning, to confirm the location of sanitary service for this lot, and that the location of the trees in relation to the property line should be reviewed. I reviewed the application against the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and as indicated in the report, I'm satisfied that the requested reduction to the exterior side yard setback for the purposes of constructing an attached garage does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Therefore, I'm recommending approval of minor variance application A1 2026 with 2 conditions attached. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Alyssa. Any questions or comments from the committee at this point on this application? Okay, seeing none, we do have the recommended motion in front of you, and I think Alyssa laid it out quite clearly. I don't think I will read it. If anybody wants to read it, they can look at our agenda as it does spell out the conditions and the reasoning why. So a mover and a seconder for the recommendation in front of us, Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, if I can get a mover and a seconder to adjourn our meeting of the Committee of Adjustment and reconvene our regular meeting, Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And it's carried. Okay, so tonight we do have a couple of delegations, and at this time, I'm going to welcome to the speaker's desk Paul Sherbin from Aqua, who is the Seniors Operation Manager, and he is going to be delivering the fourth quarter for 2025 reports for the Lucan Biddulph wastewater treatment plant, and of course for the Granton plant. So Paul, it's great to see you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and municipal. Tonight, I'm presenting the fourth quarter of the Lucan Biddulph operations report for wastewater. The Lucan Water Pollution Control Plant reported one non-compliance event during the fourth quarter. In October, the monthly average concentration of total phosphorus was 0.38 milligrams per liter, exceeding the ECA limit of 0.32. On October 20th, sludge was transported from the Granton RBC to the Lucan digesters, after which the supernatant was decanted into the Lucan influent system. Due to abnormal influent conditions received at the Granton RBC at the end of September, it is believed that the sludge transferred to the Lucan contained elevated concentrations of TP, contributing to the increased effluent TP levels. The Lucan WPCP is currently at 75% of its rated capacity. There have been 61 days to date in 2025 where the raw flow exceeded the ECA rated capacity of 1,700 cubic meters per day. There have been no days where the plant has been outside normal operating conditions. Some general maintenance that's taken place in Q4 was for the wastewater plant and pump stations includes a new sewage pump at Chestnut and some routine wet well cleanup of all wet wells. The Granton WWTP is currently at 41% of its rated capacity. There have been 11 days to date in 2025 where the raw flow exceeded the rated capacity of 270 cubic meters per day. The Granton ECA does not require additional sampling when above the rated capacity. The Granton WWTP reported 2 non-compliance events in the fourth quarter related to total ammonia nitrogen. In October, the monthly average TAN concentration was 4.4 milligrams per liter, exceeding the ECA limit of 3.0. The elevated TAN concentrations in October and November are believed to be a result of a normal influent received in September. As inspection of the collection system and it was conducted by operations staff and the municipality, confirming the process upset characterized by low dissolved oxygen levels and inhabited nitrification. The biological process remained impacted into late September. As corrective actions, the operations staff completed a full exterior cleaning of the RBC to remove inactive biomass and added biological chemical SR2 to support regrowth of the healthy microbial populations essential to nitrification. In December, the monthly average TAN concentration was 3.64 milligrams per liter, which is within the ECA limit of 5. The facility remained in compliance for December, and TAN levels continue to be monitored closely. This concludes my fourth quarter report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Westman.
Yep, a broken record here. Fats, oil and grease. How are we making out with that? Is it any better or?
We haven't had many issues in Grantham with it at the moment. Yeah, we haven't seen anything in the colder weather. It seems to be a little better, but
Any other questions? Yep, Deputy Mayor.
Not really to do with your report. I'm just curious, I don't know if Jeff and yourself would, illegal infiltration. I just read an article recently of our neighboring municipalities, like a concern with the sump pumps illegally going in and downspouts and tile. Like how can we measure, or when do we get concerned on that? And what are the triggers where, I guess, is that something you would notify Jeff of? I just, with these weather events and power outages and very expensive, obviously people have flooding in their basement, if they don't have proper backup. How do we know, before it's too late, or how are we battling that?
yeah, and we go by the flows, obviously, when we do have the high weather events or those rain events, if people are hooked into them because the flows are so much higher. How do you stop it and stuff? You just really have to put flyers out to the public and ask them not to do it. But other than that, it can be a problem. I know Jeff was working on it before. For Grant.
Yeah, and just to follow up, Paul, through the mayor. So we did do a video inspection through the whole system last year, trying to find if there was certain areas that seemed, because we do know that during a rain event, we will get high flow. We do know Granton does have infiltration issues. The plant's only at 41%, so it's not really hurting the plant. It's not really affecting the plant. Everything's still operating, but we do know that there's infiltration there. So the next step is to do smoke testing, whereas you can put smoke into the pipe and see if it starts to enter a house, and that sort of thing. It all costs money. So how much money do we want to invest in something that is maybe, if it was to gain us a lot, then it's worth it. But if it's investing the money, it becomes, where do we know? Because we know all systems have something. We know it's in Lucan. We can tell in the old part of town, Market Street, Dutchess, over in that area, there is some infiltration because we did the flow monitoring a couple of years ago. Again, it's a hard thing to trigger that, because you got to go after the homeowner, and then we get into going into people's basements, and then once we get it corrected, do they just go right back again and rehook it back up? So you really hope people are honest, but the first step is like Paul said, is education, and that sort of thing. We did implement a bylaw, so we can issue fines if we find people that have done it. Some of that becomes, do you find a new homeowner that just bought a house and doesn't know if there's a cross connection? It can get it can get very interesting as we go along in this sort of situation. But at this point, the infiltration in Granton, although peaks and goes back down, it's something that we can deal with through the operation of the plant.
Yeah, and again, my comment isn't in particular to say Grant, it's in particular to any residents that's illegally doing it, by the way. Just in general, because obviously it costs us money to treat the water. And eventually if it, again, there's going to be that time when again, one day, maybe it'll be 30 years on a sewer plant expansion, but how much is that causing, of our sewer plant to be used? It's kind of my comment, but okay, nope, thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Paul, thanks for the report. I'm just wondering, just as we move forward with our sewer treatment expansion, is there any point in time during that you would know whether there would be an issue with people using their bathrooms?
Well, when we work closely with BM Ross, a lot of times there's wet wells in town where we have some time when they're working on something. If the plant does need to be shut down for a very short period, those wet wells have some containment and we can hold it in there and pump it out if we have to. But as of right now, we don't know of any shutdowns that's going to affect any public.
Right, just ask. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, thank you, Paul, for the report. Just when it comes to non-compliances or when we exceed our targets, we have to report those to the ministry, and just I assume that's what we do. And then I'm just wondering, are there any implications, or does the ministry come back to us with requirements, or what are the results from those non-compliances?
The MASCP has not come back with anything yet, anything we reported. They just asked us if there's anything that, if we checked into it or did any homework on the background, and we give them our information. They've been pleased with so far, so.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? So just back to this, and I don't understand any of this, but so you just have to walk me through it a bit. But the elevated TAN concentrations, if I'm reading this correctly, what happened at the Granton plant eventually affected the Lucan plant.
Correct.
Okay, and that's because of these elevated concentrations?
Right, because we do haul sludge from Granton plant into the Lucan digesters, and then that's where we figured it's cross-contaminated.
So in the report, it says it's believed to be a result of an abnormal influent that was received on September 29th. And then when the report goes on to talk about corrective measures, it talks about the full exterior cleaning and this inactive biomass. So is that where the influent came from? Was this biomass? Like, I'm just wondering where this came from. Or do you know where it came from?
We don't know where it come. We knew it come through the collection system.
Okay.
So when it came into the plant in the last quarter, we did notice, like, operator come into the plant, don't notice a strange smell. That's when we first noticed it. So when it killed all the bugs on our rotator, and so we had to regrow them back and go from there.
It's an interesting plant, isn't it? That
It is, yeah.
All right, any further questions or comments? If none, then thank you very much for joining us, Paul. Great to see you. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you in a couple months, I guess.
Have a good night.
With that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to welcome James Nechtel from Jacobs up to the speaker's desk. And James is with us tonight to deliver the 2025 Annual Water System Distribution Report. It's great to see you. Thanks for coming tonight, and I will turn it over to you, James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors. The annual water report for Ontario municipalities is mandated by Ontario Regulation 170/03, and it serves to ensure transparent compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. Provides council and the public with a summary of water quality test results, system performance, and adverse test results. As per Regulation 170, after review with council, a copy of this report is made available on the municipality's website, and copies are to be provided to interested parties upon request. So I'm going to go to page 4, table 1. This displays the free chlorine residual values recorded for the 2025 reporting period. This table includes online chlorine analyzer results, as well as grab samples measured with handheld colorimeters. All results in this 2025 were within acceptable values by the Regulation 170. Free chlorine residual values need to be above 0.05 milligram per liter, and ideally above 0.2 milligram per liter. So on table 2, this is our microbiological testing that was conducted in 2025. There was 315 samples analyzed for total coliform, E. coli, and HPC. The presence of total coliforms in drinking water indicates potential contamination from environmental sources. Not always harmful, but they act as an indicator that harmful organisms could be present. On December 9th, 2025, we did receive a lab result back that had a result of 1 CFU per 100 mil. Anything above 0 is considered adverse. London Middlesex Health Unit and Spills Action Center were called. They were notified. Resamples were taken at the same location, as well as upstream and downstream from that location. And all 3 came back 0 for total coliform, which rectified the event for the health unit. All other samples for the year were negative for total coliform. All samples in 2025 were negative for E. coli, and all HPC samples were within acceptable ranges for potable drinking water. Page 6, table 3 displays trihalomethane and haloacetic acid tests for the 2025 reporting year. Samples are done quarterly within the distribution system, and all samples came back well below the max allowable concentration set out by the regulation 170. So trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids are byproduct chemicals formed during disinfection when using sodium hypochlorite. Table 4 is our lead and alkalinity results that were taken in 2025. There was 2 samples taken. Both samples were well below the max allowable concentration as well. Lastly, on page 7 and 8, I did want to touch on the ministry inspection and regulatory issues. The ministry conducted their annual inspection on October 24th of 2025. A final inspection rating was given of 95.34%. There was 1 non-compliance and 3 recommendations made. We'll start with the non-compliance. These are taken directly from the ministry's audit report. It was noted that the operating authority did not obtain acceptable lab results before a new water main provided water to users on Water Street. To prevent reoccurrence, the operating authority amended their internal commissioning of new water mains written procedure to include having the overall responsible operator review all relevant information before a new water main may direct flow to public users. The operators to complete new water main commissioning training course through the Walkerton Clean Water Center, and that is scheduled for the end of this month. The first recommendation was noted that there was no backflow prevention program, policy, or bylaw in place. The recommendation was for the system owner to review the types of facilities connected to the Lucan Biddulph distribution system and the potential hazard that each one presents to determine if cross-connection or backflow prevention bylaw is needed. It was noted for the second recommendation that there was no program in place for inspecting and exercising distribution valves. It's recommended that the system owner and operating authority create a written valve inspection and exercising program that meets the needs of the drinking water system. And the third recommendation was that no bylaw or policy exists for limiting public access to hydrants, and it's recommended that the system owner create a bylaw to restrict access to hydrants or other infrastructure that may allow contaminants to enter the drinking water system. So that concludes my summary report. There is a second report on the agenda there, but it's designed for reporting for the ministry, and it contains the same information as this summary report, just kind of in a different format.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. And questions or comments? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 3 questions. With respect to the recommendations at the end, where are we with that?
So the recommendations, second recommendation for valve exercising, we currently have an SOP that's in the works that I've been working on with our overall responsible operator. So we're creating that SOP. We're going through and mapping out all of the distribution valves that we're going to be adding into our maintenance system that we use. And hopefully by this spring, we're going to have that in place and have that exercising valve SOP start performing those valve exercising operations by spring. That's the plan for that one.
Okay, thank you.
The recommendation for 1 and 3, I think.
Yeah, James, I'll take that. Those are more of the owners. So the first recommendation was the having a bylaw in place for a backflow prevention program, which I'm working on. It will fall, but the first one that's going to come to council is a water use bylaw. So that will address, public access to the water, cross or unfound connections, all that sorts of things. I'm just working on the fines and the charges that'll go along with that bylaw. So that should be coming to council quite shortly. So then after that one's presented to council, then I'll be following up with the backflow prevention bylaw. So.
Right. Okay. And there was one other, or is that, oh, that's covered. Got it. All right. Second question. So on page 5, there's 3.2. You're talking about the coliform test that you mentioned that there was an adverse event, and then the people were notified. And then we flushed the samples, collected resamples, and the results of the resamples came back free of coliform, and that rectified the event. I'm just not sure how that rectified the event when we don't know where that came from in the first place. Because my understanding is that coliform is like bacteria found in soil, environment. It's a pathogen. So I'm just wondering, I'm not sure the wording just says it rectified it and fixed it. So I don't know if it fixed it. So
For the health unit, typically, like that's a very common thing to happen in water distribution systems, to get a very small hit of total coliform. It can happen just from a slight sampling error of, the person taking the sample, slight sampling error when it's at the lab, someone opening up a dish, breathing on a sample, like they
false positive.
fall positive. They can be, they're very popular, and typically the health unit response is to have a resample done at the exact same location, another one done upstream and downstream.
Right.
And then if those are all come back zero, then they assume that was a false positive, that first one.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
One more. So in one of the stats right on the I think the second 2.0, so the average daily consumption is like 1,327 cubic meters a day. Is that average for a community? Do you know if that average for a community our size? For the number of users we have?
There's nothing that jumps out to me that would be abnormally high. I did run this report by some of my senior managers, and they didn't, nothing jumped out to them as well. In my experience, it's kind of within the range for the population for a town this size. That being said, there is an increase this year from last year. I do believe it's around 20 to 30% increase of that number there, that the average daily demand has gone up in 2025 compared to last year.
Okay, all right, good. No, thanks, just out of curiosity. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Thank you, James, for the report. I just want to ask about the non-compliance that was noted with the water main brought into service on Water Street. And I think you mentioned like the operating authority. Is the operating authority the township? Like, do we have staff that has that operator, or is that the Jacob staff that is the operating authority?
The operating authority is the Jacob staff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, just wondering, I think it's great that the training was recommended and we're going ahead with that, and just wondering if there is sort of like a root cause to this issue, like or why we would have went ahead and put that water main into service prior to the proper disinfection procedures. Is it due to a lack of training, or, are we easing up on the standards, or just any context you can provide on that?
So there was a few things that happened. There's two sets of samples that need to come back negative before you can tie a water main into the distribution system. The first set came back negative, the second set came back positive, but it also came back positive, and the lab did not send out the results to the operating authority. Essentially, it ended up going to a couple names that were no longer with our company. So our operator did not receive that second set of samples for quite a few days after he typically normally would. And in that case, he ended up realizing that the samples hadn't been in. I think he ended up looking at his results that came back from the first one, thinking that they were the second set that came back, and made a mistake that way to open up the valves to the distribution system. So it was mostly just an honest mistake on the operator's side, that he went ahead and did that just based on mixing up his report with the first set and the second set.
Okay, well, thanks for that information.
I just might remind council, after that happened, we did have a debrief with the Jacobs team on that, and kind of walk through, and it did seem it was kind of, a number of errors in place, and everything just led to that. So in the end, nobody was ill, nothing happened, and we looked after it. But yeah, just remind everybody of that debrief. Any other questions or comments? Do you have something to say, Jeff? Yep. Oh. Yep. Okay. No, I have the same question on the bylaws and just wanted to refresh everybody on that, the one, the one non-compliance, as well. So I didn't have anything else, so.
Thanks, James. And I maybe should have talked to you about this beforehand, but I just wanted to bring it because I was going to bring up to council on the weekend. We did have low water pressure in Granton. Andrew was the call in, and he did get called in, but it took a little bit from a resident calling around to get things activated. And it turns out that I don't know if getting into too long of a story, but the power was surging in Granton and caused some issues with the with our pumps not turning on and coming back on. And it has to do with the three-phase power that wasn't coming through. Everything worked out. Andrew got everything back up and running in a very short period of time. We did notify Peter, which works for Jacobs. We did notify the health unit because we had low water pressure. We flushed any water mains or dead ends or anything like that just to make sure that everything was fine, and everything was. The health unit had no issues with that, and I think James, like that you followed up with anything there?
Yeah, the health unit was satisfied with the flushing that we did on the north, south, east, west ends of town. The residuals that we got during the flushing were all acceptable where they should be. So they had no further instructions at that point, and they were satisfied that the water was of good quality at that point. Yeah.
I've talked to Andrew and we'll talk to Jacobs and review the incident. SCADA, we should have had a low water alarm, and how that was being affected with the power surging. We'll have to figure that out because there was an alarm about a generator turning on, but the low alarm for the water level did not turn on. So we do need to follow up on some of that. But that's an internal thing and we'll figure that that out.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, one last call for questions. If not, thank you very much for coming in. It's good to see you. And I guess we'll see you in a couple months or.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. With that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the minutes. We have the one set of minutes from March 3rd in front of us. And if nothing needs to be corrected or amended, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those as circulated. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We've got a few items on the consent agenda. I know nothing's been pulled. I did want to highlight for everybody the Middlesex County highlights. And when you have a few minutes, we had a report delivered to us on the county housing and homelessness services that the county is responsible for. And I would encourage everybody to read it because it really is it's an excellent, excellent report. It really does kind of spell out the lanes for which the county is responsible for when it comes to housing. And we know that housing is a big topic. And so it really does spell out the city's role, the county's role, when it does come to housing. And what that means. So when you have a few minutes, I would encourage you to read that. If there was anything else you want to speak to? Yeah, Councillor Hodgins.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, just there's two items attached for the regional consolidation of CAs. There's a news release from ABCA, item 9.4, and then information from the province in item 9.3. So they are moving ahead and the decision's been posted on the ERO. It's a pretty long posting on there with lots of information. But they are moving ahead with 9 regional conservation authorities. It was originally, they were looking at 7, so there was a couple modifications. We are still going to be with 2 regional conservation authorities. So the ABCA is going in the Lake Huron, and then UTRCA is going to be going in the Western Lake Erie. And the changes are going to take effect early 2027, and then 2026 is going to be all of the planning for this. So lots of information there. I would encourage everyone give that a read. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take those back to ABCA. We're meeting next week.
Thanks for that. And then just so you know, Brian Petrie, who's the mayor of Ingersoll, and he's the chair of UTRC, he's coming next meeting. So I imagine that will be a topic of discussion. So, and Ron did attend the virtual briefing about that last week. So is there anything else that council wanted to speak to? Okay, if I could get a mover and a seconder to receive those items for information, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan. All in favor? It's carried. On to correspondence. Don't know if there was any items of correspondence that anyone wanted to speak to. I didn't know if we maybe wanted to bring this back at another time for discussion. I thought the resolution from Thames Center was interesting in support of Bill 21 when it came to Bill 21 is a bill that is speaking about like a food belt, which would be like a green belt that protects our agricultural lands. I don't know if you'd had a chance to read that or get a sense, but I didn't know if that was something we might want to circle back on at some point to talk about if that's something that we would support. So maybe we can talk, if you haven't read it, then we could bring it back the next meeting. We can bring it back. Yep. So we can bring it back the next meeting. Okay. Okay, on to, I need a mover and a seconder just to receive and file those items, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, on to committee reports. Blue Water,
Well, we have a meeting Thursday.
CEDC.
I have a report this evening, just very brief. On Thursday, March the 5th, the Community Economic Development Committee met and we had a strategic work planning session. And the exercise was led by Kara Finn and Tracy Rannick of the county. They came in, we had, it was a lengthy work session. And what we were doing is we were taking a look at some of the planning and analysis and establishing some goals for our 5-year master plan. So we looked at some, and I know they didn't use the SWOT analysis, but some strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and things. So we had a great, it was actually very, very well done. I know that staff now has a lot of information and they will be coming forward at some point just to report on that information and then eventually a 5-year master plan. That's all for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lake Huron, we did have a meeting last week and I forgot my notes, so I will report back on that next meeting. Fire boards. I can report on it because there was really only one, I don't want to say significant, but one meaningful report that is worthy to be reported back. So we've been working on years bringing water to Oneida, and at this point, at the meeting last week, we issued the tender. So, and awarded the tender. So that was very exciting. And as I say, I've been on this board since 2010. I think we started talking about this in 2012, 2014. So to award the tender is pretty significant. So that was really the highlight of the meeting. Fire boards, I don't think that there's anything. ABCA?
Yeah, I'll just say we're meeting next Thursday.
Okay. And Parks and Recreation?
I have nothing to report this time.
trails and kind of Ron.
If I may, Madam Mayor, you did touch on it earlier that I did attend the online session regarding the new Conservation Authority setup in the province. And as Councillor Hodgins said, they're moving towards a nine specific areas. They're obviously very big. Unfortunately for Lucan Biddulph, we still remain split between two different, so it's not going to be much different from our end. We'll still be dealing with two different areas. The big change will be, and when I say change, these changes won't take effect till 2027. But it does appear that the funding that we presently give to the ABCA and the Upper Thames, that will change to the upper tier. So the upper tier will fund that. So that's going to be interesting to see how that rolls out in 2027. The province is setting up an overall, I guess you could say an overall umbrella Ontario-wide provincial conservation authority board to administer these amalgamations. And they do have funding to do that. So there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done before now and the end of the year, but they are aiming to have this implemented in the first part of 2027. So there's going to be lots of updates as we go along, but it does appear that the funding for both conservation authorities will change from the lower tier to the upper tier. So stay tuned.
Which is interesting since we're part of one lower tier, but the other, or one upper tier, and then another upper tier is going to be responsible for. Anyways, they'll all figure it out, I'm sure. Just in keeping with that, a couple weeks ago, Councillor Hodgins had gone to a meeting at London City Hall where London Mayor had brought together representatives from essentially Upper Thames River watershed. I think it was mostly Upper Thames people. Anyways, there's a follow-up meeting, which I'm going to on April the 8th. So there'll be more discussion then. But at this point, province has already said what they're doing. So we'll see. So that was it, Ron?
Yes.
Okay. You don't have anything. Okay. Alyssa, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to request the removal of the holding H-4 symbol for the site-specific residential first density exception holding zone in the Timber Ridge subdivision for Phase 1 to permit the development of a low-density residential block containing 61 single detached lots. The subject property as a whole is approximately 80.1 hectares in area and located on the east side of Sainsbury Line, north of Kent Avenue in Lucan Biddulph. The land specifically requesting the holding removal is the low-density residential section of the Phase 1 lands, 61 lots for the construction of those single detached dwellings. The holding symbol would remain in place for the multi-family block, and removal of that holding symbol would require a subsequent site plan approval. The prerequisites for the removal of the holding symbol have been satisfied for the 61 single detached lots, recognizing that this development is subject to a subdivision agreement, which the developer has entered into, has installed all required extensions to municipal services, and has demonstrated wastewater capacity to accommodate the development of those lands. So the removal of the holding symbol would be consistent with the provincial planning statement, the County of Middlesex official plan, and the Township of Lucan Biddulph official plan. Therefore, I'm recommending approval of zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2-2026 and requesting that the implementing bylaw be forwarded for consideration of council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Alyssa. And any questions or comments on this report? Nothing? Okay, then you've got the recommended motion in front of you. As Alyssa said, her recommendation is to approve the application. If I can get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins, all in favor? And that is carried. Public Works, did you have anything verbal, Jeff? Economic Development, did you have anything verbal, Lisa? Nothing. So then that brings us to other business. There's a couple of items in there. And you saw that other business got updated as you wanted, Councillor Hodgins. But there is a letter that we received from MTO. And Ron, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is the ongoing saga of the Lucan Biddulph request to extend the connecting link at the south end of the village of Lucan. So at the present time, the connecting link stops right at the middle of the intersection there at Tim Hortons on Saintsbury and number 4. So what our hope is, and what we've been discussing with the MTO, is the extension of the connecting link to the, basically to the Bell Telephone Building as you're heading towards Elginfield from Lucan. So those discussions have been very slow moving, I guess you could say.
I'm going to interrupt you just for anybody that's listening. The first email was a year ago, March 12th.
Correct. So we continue to try and move the needle on this issue. We don't seem to be getting too far. I think we've kind of exhausted a little bit of our influence at the local level. So I do think we've had discussions about requesting the ministry, the minister and or the deputy minister to come out to Lucan. We originally thought that, we could go to Toronto, meet with them at their office. It's a much better use of their time. It's a much better use of our time to actually physically get their attention. These 15-minute meetings that we've had at various conferences, it's too much for the ministry staff and the ministry people to sort of digest what we're trying to do. We're number 7 in 17 delegations in that day, so we wanted to sort of get their attention and have their attention for up to an hour. But after reading their response to their concerns, it's a bit of a head scratcher when I hear things like, or when I see things like, well, we have a concern about snow storage. Like that's a head shaker for me. And I think, and we've discussed this with the mayor, I think we need to get them out and stand them on the road and actually physically make them see what we're talking about here to get their attention. This should not be a big deal. And it's turning out to be a much more difficult deal than it should be. So I think we just need to find the right person in the ministry to come out here, have a look at it, common sense, and let's move forward. So I don't know, Jeff, if you have anything to add to that, but it's been a frustrating road to date.
I maybe to the mayor and to council, I echo Ron's frustration. I've only read it and haven't really been able to digest all the information there, because there's 6 points that are given, and to me those points contradict one another. It's just, to me, it's not well written. So I think there's a lot more information and a lot more work to be done here. And frustration is probably the best word that we could use right now.
Agreed. Comments? Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Regan.
So when I was reading this, and I thought to myself, like, it's almost like they're making up reasons. And if you actually saw what the development was out there and the need for that, and to Ron's point about actually, and I'm just wondering, have we approached our MPP? Have we gone that route? I'm just wondering, and I agree with Ron. I mean, the 15-minute meetings, and I know we've actually talked about this before. I was at one delegation. I think we did this, and I'm thinking like there's development there. Is somebody to actually visit, to actually see what that is? I don't know what they're visualizing, or maybe the last time the person's making a decision, the last time they were out here was 6 years ago. So I don't know. So I do agree, and I do see the need for that. But I'm not an engineer or anything, but I don't understand a lot of these reasons for not wanting to do it. It almost, to me, and I'll just say it just seems like just an excuse not to do it. I don't understand that when there is clearly a need. That's just my thoughts.
Deputy Mayor?
I think it would be good if we can put it on Business Horizon, I guess I'm gonna request to staff that I'm assuming from this email, the person that sent it and anyone else that's below that from the MTO, and now unless it's just that Jody. And I guess what I'm gonna request our staff to do is request a meeting, on-site meeting. And if they deny it, they deny it, and I would hope you would say brought up in council, it's on Business Horizon for a future date, and ideally the mayor or deputy mayor, council members could go, or at least two people, so we don't have a forum too many to be there on site. But I'd like us to meet at the apartment building, and then at the apartment building, and then from there we go to Tim Hortons and we would walk through the subdivision like they're suggesting, more or less, and go back around by the old car wash up by my place, come up and we have a coffee, and we do that.
Yeah.
And I really want us to do that, and that's my request. And we put it on Business Horizon until they say no or yes, just to our meeting on site at the apartment building. And then what we would do after the meeting at Tim Hortons, we would then walk unsafely back up to the apartment. And then we would part ways and then confirm, that, because the problem is there's only one site to be developed. And then it's done. So, and then everything's filled there. Basically, it's just the one site yet to fill. So I guess the question during that meeting would be, right now there's a proposal out there for an apartment building. When that comes, and would that meet their requirements? And if it's still a no, then at least I guess we don't have to budget for it, think about it anymore. And as the people in the community in that area ask us, then we can refer them to their representative, which, to who to discuss, which wouldn't be their council member. But it is frustrating. Like the time of these emails took a year. It's frustrating, but I do think meeting in Toronto or them meeting here is a waste of time. So we can put that on Business Horizon. That's my request to staff. And I certainly would, hopefully if the mayor was available for that, that'd be great. And then, one other and myself, that'd be great. But and staff, and we would meet at the apartment. We would walk to Tim Hortons, and then we would walk back up the front. So, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Certainly, I think MTO just has a problem with that intersection. If we go back in history, for some reason, that's an issue for them. And whether this stems from it, but to, your point, Councillor Regan, you read it and it's like they're just trying to grasp at straws and come up with something and just push us aside. So, I think that, our local MPP, he would be a great advocate for this. And whether we try speaking to him prior to give him the heads up, I mean, this sort of thing, in reality, an MPP that shouldn't be part of. I mean, but we can certainly make his office aware. And if they take us up on their invitation, he could come with us, or representatives from his office. But he, just knowing him like we do, I think he would be an advocate for this,
Thank you.
So you good with that? Okay. All right. Is there? And then again, if there's anything else that you want to put on Business Arising that isn't on, if you can let Tina know from there. Is there any notices? Motion? Councillor comments? Councillor Westman?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Jeff's staff for what they did on the weekend with the power outages in the area at the pump house and Grant and what have you. They Andrew and the guys stuck to it all weekend and really put the effort in. So I'm very, very relieved that was done, because our Grant residents were having a rough go. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other councillor comments? Okay, then we have in front of us 4 bylaws. The first one is just to do with the Damon drain, so it's just getting its 3rd reading. And then the other 3 have to do with the tidy yard bylaw, the confirming, and the HSIL. Okay, or H symbol, excuse me. So the motion in front of us is that bylaw 05-2026 be read a third and final time and be adopted, and that bylaw 13-2026, 14-2026, and 201-2026 be read a first, second, and third and final time and be adopted. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. And the motion to adjourn at 6:56 PM, a mover and a seconder, Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very